Episode number 12. Welcome to Average Joe PT. So, today, both of you guys have looked at it. Dropped a new video last night, and all about one muscle. And the one muscle does make a big difference. In this case, it's called the quadratus lumborum muscle. And that particular muscle wreaks havoc on the spine and your lower back. Whether you have a bulge or whether you have a herniation, whether you have some sort of degenerative disc or arthritis. Hi, Katie's Corner. Nice walk. Well, we're going to be talking a little bit about back pain. And that reaches probably 85% of the human race at some point has some sort of back pain. And that particular muscle group that I dropped the video last night on, quadratus lumborum, is usually 50% of the problem a lot of times. It goes into spasm. It can refer pain. And, the doctor will give you muscle relaxers or some sort of anti-inflammatory to try and get it to calm down. And the reality is what I talked about is if you're sitting incorrectly, that tissue gets over elongated or overstretched and it keeps it going. So you're taking the medication and it's blocking that pain a little bit, but that tissue, that muscle, that ligament ends up staying over elongated and stretched and continues your pain. So, and that can give you pain down the side of your hip. Doesn't give you radicular pain. It gives you referral pain. Two different things. So there's a difference between radicular pain, which can come from an organ. People who have heart problems, they can have referred pain down the arm. They can have referred pain in their neck or their upper back. And the same thing goes with muscle group. You can have a spasm going on there and it can refer. My mom would want to know about, I'll tell her. So yes, well, and probably at some point, maybe in time you might too. It's hard to tell. But that particular muscle, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll do muscle blocks or injections to that part. They'll do steroid injections. They'll do lidocaine injections to that muscle that I talk about. And it's a rough one because it ends up spasming and it clamps down because it starts at your ribs and goes down to your hip, and it can clamp down to one side, and next thing you know, it starts to irritate your facet joint in your back. So then you start having that problem going on, and then you're like, oh my Lord. So I'm going to be doing a research video on that tomorrow. I'll probably do it as a live, just in case anybody has any questions specifically. And so that muscle group is nasty, as well as the piriformis muscle. And people tend to want to do the same exact treatment for both things. They want to get a tennis ball or a golf ball, and they want to roll on it. You want to roll on it and roll on it. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is it starts referring pain even more. Now, the caveat, like I said in the video, is initially, when you apply pressure to something, like I say, if it have a knot in your neck or maybe in your back, that initial sensation of feeling good is what we call nociceptors. I didn't go into detail in the video because it really didn't play into that video too well, but it did make sense with it. But those receptors actually help block that pain for a little bit, as well as you get some endorphins and some feel-good hormones. But once your body washes them out, it doesn't take very long. Within an hour, what can happen after doing that tennis ball or pushing on it with your thumb or whatever you were doing or having someone push on it, you can start to tighten up again, which it will. And the next thing you know, it starts going into spasm. That's your nervous system going on at that point because you've irritated the muscle so much. And now the little nerve endings that make that muscle tighten and shorten and tighten have all gotten aggravated from you or for someone pushing on it. And now you're dealing with two problems. You're dealing with spasms or back pain, and you're also dealing with nerve irritation at the same time. So, like I said in the video, it's very smart to stay away from that. You know, well, they have all kinds of things out. They have that gun, that shooting gun thing. That was a big thing probably about 2 or 3 months ago, where you just take that, had a rubber piece on the end, that kind of looked like a gun. You're supposed to beat your neck or whatever with it. Not a smart thing to do when you have something that is aggravated. Now, if you're like me or someone else, you just have some tight neck muscles because maybe you're looking down too long, or maybe you have some stress in your neck, and you can have, oh, that's one piece I didn't talk about, but I will right now, is you can actually pull a lot of your stress. Some people will hold it up in here, hold their stress, okay? But a lot of people hold their stress down in that muscle group, that quadratus lumborum muscle. And so that's another piece is, stress related issues that's going on in your life, hormone imbalance. Maybe it's your monthly gift that God gave us all, or gave the women all, that going on when you have a hormone imbalance and all of a sudden your back gets inflamed. A lot of times it's not coming from the internal flushing of the special thing. Sometimes it's really coming from the quadratus lumborum getting irritated. Hey, hi, alternative thumbs. What's up, Joe? How you doing, sir? Glad you showed up. Thank you so much for coming by. So that muscle group is, that quadratus lumborum is terrible when it comes to either that time of the month or stress related, or like I talked about in the video, poor postural alignment can get it aggravated. People think it's from lifting. It's usually that's not the case. And it's usually not the case from degenerative disc or herniation or bulge of the disc or facet joint, though they can get aggravated when that muscle starts to go into spasm. But that's usually not the cause of that muscle group in the first place. You have a nice weather down there. Nice time to walk. Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah. Well, here in North Carolina, it's been hot. It's been in the upper 90s here, and it's actually the last few days it's actually started to cool down a little bit for us. I think it's maybe 80s, high 80s out here right now. In North Carolina, it's pretty humid. Um, but that particular muscle group, like I said before, is terrible. So that's what you want to stay away from. So if you're curious about back pain, about that specific muscle group, which causes a lot of people's back pain, you might want to go check that out. That's the last one I did. And then I'm going to show you some research articles, some peer-reviewed journals on the stuff I talked about in the video tomorrow. But I always like to do my horror stories. So horror story number 1 for physical therapy. So this was probably about 7 years ago now. And I'm out doing, seeing a patient out in a home. This was probably longer than that. It's probably more like 8 years ago now. 7, 8 years ago, somewhere in there. And I go to this patient's home, and literally I can't get to the door. I can't get to the door of this person's home because it's literally covered with woods. I mean, and I'm like, it's literally barely a path to even get to this person's house. Absolutely disaster. I call the person up just to make sure I'm at the right house. I'm like, you at blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, yeah, come on in. And I'm like, okay. So I left my car up the road. And then hey, how you doing? So I left my car up the road. How you doing there, cooking? So needless to say, I left my car up the road and I walked to the patient's house. So I get in there, literally praying to God I don't step on, look in, there's a hole in the kitchen. People are living in this. There's a hole in the kitchen, literally a hole, not a skylight, a hole. And you could see the tree over the top of it. And they had in the kitchen, they had like this tarp there covering like dirt and water. And so I was there seeing this elderly lady. She was probably about 84 years old. She had fallen and broken her hip, and they had fixed it with some screws and some stuff like that. So they fixed it, and so she couldn't put any weight on it, so she had to be in a wheelchair. So they had her in a wheelchair in this house, if you want to call it that. It had stairs. It was the the one family member that was there helping her. He couldn't. He had dementia, and so they had their son there who was coming in and out all the time. I mean, I don't know how reasonable he was. So I ended up having to. I saw her, did all the vital signs and everything, looked at her medications. I ended up sending her back to the hospital. So I'm going to kind of give you guys a little preview of someone else's house, but it kind of looked like this one. So here I'm going to switch it around. So see this house? See this house that's all like woods? See how it's all overgrown? See that all overgrown? That's exactly how that house was. Literally, literally overgrown. So here I am trying to find my way through. Now this isn't that person's home, but it gives you an idea what I was talking about. And it was like I really thought the place was abandoned. So like I said, I ended up having to call the surgeon and say, hey, and call the hospital and say, you know, we got to send her back. This place is unsafe. I know why she fell in the first place and broke her hip. She's gonna fall and break that hip again, and you might not be able to fix it next time. So needless to say, they ended up getting the ambulance and sending her back, and she ended up going to a short-term nursing facility after that. We didn't see her. She went back to the hospital. I think she was there for a couple of days for like dehydration, and then they ended up sending her to a short-term nursing facility, and I never saw her after that. So it's hard to tell whether they got adult protective services on the situation probably and say, hey, you know, this is inappropriate. This is not appropriate at all. You know, so that's my horror story. You just never know. Enjoy walking, bro. Thanks. So you just you just never know. So that's my horror story for the day. But going back to the two muscle groups that I talked about last time, which was the multifidus and the latissimus dorsi, that people really underestimate with the lower back. I say there's four things. I touched on three of them. I touched on the multifidus, the latissimus dorsi, in my last video, the quadratus lumborum. What I didn't touch on was the erector spinae, and that's the muscles that literally, besides the multifidus, literally run from one segment on your spine to the next. And those muscles, and there's some smaller ones in there called the rotatories that literally help rotate the spine at the initial base. So there's that piece too. But I'd say overall, those are the big muscle groups that we're going to be focusing on over the next several videos. I've just started to touch on those ones that I said before. So hopefully you guys liked that episode. And I did put some time into it. Who cares, right? Hopefully you guys liked it. Hopefully it made a difference for you. Or you can find someone that will like it. And hopefully share it out. Give me a thumbs up. I always love those. And ring the bell. Hopefully ring the bell, right? And let's see. Until next time. Hi, it's Scully, I always say when Scully's with me. Look up and keep smiling. See you next time, folks.